translate that apparent. So therefore, the challenges, illiterate populations, and then also emergency medical research. So here we have waivers. I think you remember in COVID times, so there are cases and scenarios when the informed consent and individual autonomy is overridden, whereby now the state can decide for the community in emergency medical research. So also now, but in you getting the informed consent, at the process, when you are, at the moment when you are getting out the informed consent, signature from a research participant, then you should ensure privacy. So privacy comes in when you are receiving the informed consent, there and then. So you should, let's say, have maybe a room, maybe a closed room or some open space, but with some privacy, because information may leak that would as well affect our research participant. So, and then confidentiality comes in when you have collected the data from your participants, but how are you going to protect? How are you going to anonymize? How are you going to de-identify the data that you've collected? So if you collect data, so how are you going to protect it? Are you going to use a password-protected computer and encrypted? Are you going to have it in a book bank? How are you going to do that? So secure storage and encryption. How is it going to be ethically handled? So now in research, we are having the genetic research, genome and genetics research. It is one of the key cores now that is really coming in with lots of ethical violation. Because when you collect, let's say, a data sample, let's say a blood sample from a human research participant, when you have genetic information that you want to get from that, one of the samples, or maybe from a community, actually, when you have that sample, it can identify the population. It can even bring about identifying a certain community that it was got from. Therefore, if you had kept the confidentiality and privacy, and maybe the participants didn't want their information to leak, information would leak by just poor handling of genetic data or information. So when, let's say, you are in you are in a country, and then you are going to transfer that material to another country, let's say you are having a collaborative research, someone in the UK and someone, let's say, in Lagos, a PI, a local PI, and then an international PI, when they have research and then they're going to transfer the material, you have to give us a clear write-up of how you're going to transfer. Data transfer agreements, data management agreements. Then consent is very wide. Is it just normal consent, or it is broad consent? You could collect some sample that you expect to put it, to have that sample stored. So after storing that sample, and then someone could use it for secondary studies. So all that should come out clearly. Now for the researchers, in your proposal, and as well as in your manuscripts, everything should come out clearly when you are having that ethics consideration section. Now, when you're having that ethics consideration section, some people would state out a section which looks lovely because they tap out all the things that we need. We shall ensure privacy, we shall ensure confidentiality, and then we shall have a community engagement plan. How are you going to do that? How are you going to ensure privacy? You need to dig deep into that. How are you going to ensure confidentiality? If you're going to transfer data, where are those forms, data transfer agreements that they sign, etc. So there are lots of things. So you need to dig deep into giving us really everything, not just the surface top of what you are going to do. I think they are clear. Okay, so now we have institutional review boards, others are RECs, and I'm one of the people who sit on a REC, that is the Mbarara University of Science and Technology Research Ethics Committee. So these RECs have a mandate to review research for ethical compliance. Is this research not going to violate the ethical principles? Is it going to generate more good than harm? So there are also processes that we follow, such as someone submitting in a protocol, and as well as addressing ethical concerns and receiving approval before data collection. So, when someone gets deliberations from the ethics committee, they address that. But now in this session, we are trying now to understand what is required of you. For us to have a scientific or a social research which is sound, we need to have all these at the back of our minds. Today, I'm not talking about animal research, but animal research also comes in with consent. You need to consent the caretakers of those animals. And there are lots of things. It's really deep and broad. So I had to give us a certain case study about and some of the ethical dilemmas. So when we look at a real world scenario, it would show us clearly what is required of us. So this was in 1996 in Nigeria. It was a Trovan trial. Remember Nigeria, when I look at the map of Africa, it falls under, it is called a belt, the meningitis belt. So there was an outbreak of meningitis in Nigeria, and this Kaiser, which is a very, very known company, came in to test its Trovan fluoxetine trial, to test its drug, the effectiveness of Trovan or trovafloxacin. It was a drug, it was a clinical trial to test its effectivity or effectiveness in managing meningitis. So they really didn't get any ethical approval. They came in and started conducting their study. But now, for you to have a research conducted and you want to test a new drug, so you need to make sure that the drug you are giving in the control arm, we don't have the experimental arm, we also have the control arm. The drug you are giving in the control arm should be a standard treatment. Yeah, so you shouldn't come up with something and then you give a substandard treatment to the other arm. Remember, they are blinded. They won't understand because we have double-blinded, triple-blinded studies. But remember, research participants are blinded in the other arm, and this one. So you want to study the effectiveness or superiority or non-inferiority studies. But however, you have not ascertained a clear consent, which is having information, comprehension, and voluntariness. And you've not even got an ethical clearance. So, and this one was an experimental antibiotic on 200 children, and then the control group received ceftriaxone, a standard treatment. But however, so you read about this and it is there. So some of the implications, they didn't have informed consent. They just got children who had come to a very big facility. They recruited them into the study. After recruiting them into the study, they gave the parents false hope. And so they were using even an approved drug in a vulnerable population. So we are coming up with a world vulnerable population. Remember when I was introducing this webinar, we saw that in the Nazi experiments in 1947, the German doctors conducted research that was violating human rights. But however, they were in a vulnerable group of people, that is the prisoners. Now in the CFR document that I've just talked about just of now, the CFR in the United States, it also categorizes prisoners as vulnerable groups of people. So if you want to conduct any study in this vulnerable group of population, the prisoners, you need to make sure, you need to be clear of all the ethical issues. You need to clear all the ethical issues. Because even when you give something small to a prisoner, it could be coercive. Yeah? You could even decide some kind of a soft drink. How coercive would it be? How are you going to receive informed consent? How are you going to ensure privacy, confidentiality? How are you going to engage the community? So the word vulnerable. There are vulnerable groups such as pregnant women. A pregnant woman or a breastfeeding mother is having two-in-one. Two-in-one means that the research participant and then also the baby in the womb. So pregnant women are classified as vulnerable groups of populations. Prisoners are even the children, among others. So you need to understand, you want to carry out a certain research in any area, you need to understand, is it a vulnerable population? So remember, this drug was subjected to these young children, 200. But I think when I was reading, I think they all died. So there's harm to participants. Harm, we have a risk-benefit analysis. Risk-benefit analysis. When you're going to carry out any study, you need to weigh the benefits and the risks of a certain study. So if at all you find that the harm is high, then you stop or halt the study. So there was absence of ethical oversight, whereby I talked about the institutional review boards. So I just compiled some of the things that would give us the best practices in research ethics. First of all, scientific and social value. I've not talked about a key ethical document. It is called the CIOMS, or the CIOMS guidelines. Its number one ethical principle is that the research you are going to carry out should have scientific value and as well as social value. What is it going to contribute? So scientific value, it should follow scientific procedures. So all the methods, everything should be scientific. If you're having a scientific study that you are doing. So community engagement is key because it comes in with lots of things. So when I'm engaging a community, there are several stakeholders that are involved. We have the primary stakeholders, the secondary stakeholders, And then the tertiary stakeholders. If I want to study a certain population, so the group of that population that I want to study are the primary stakeholders. Now, the secondary stakeholders are those, now like the health workers or the community leaders. And then the tertiary stakeholders are that is at the government level or the officials, etc. So you need to have a clear community engagement plan and protocol, how you are going to engage the community, because actually now recommendations show that when you are conceptualizing your idea in mind, you need to present it to the community, and then from inception of this research, the community is engaged up to dissemination of your research findings, and as well as informal publication, presenting at regular conferences, etc. So ensure transparent authorship and avoid plagiarism. So in this contemporary era, whereby we have the E-era, others call it the E-era, the internet. So when you have write-ups, please make sure that you subject these write-ups into plagiarism checkers to make sure that you don't plagiarize. Plagiarism is also a very broad thing that we wouldn't talk about in just a minute, but there are lots of plagiarism checkers that you would use to make sure that you actually present authentic integrity research. So promote equitable participant selection. Remember the three core principles: participant autonomy. Then the third one was justice, which is equitable participant communication selection. Then continuously educate researchers on ethics. So we have responsible conduct of research. So in we've been doing a study in South Africa, the University of Witwatersrand has run, and their research ethics committee requires that you, the PI, the principal investigator, should have sufficient knowledge and training in research ethics foundations. And they have that course called the TREE, T-R-E-E-E, TREE model, whereby they carry out that. Even the research assistant, everyone should have evidence that they did that. There is even RCR. RCR is responsible conduct of research. Those are all short courses that you would do to enhance your knowledge in research ethics, such that you have good practices. And another thing, compensation and reimbursement. So compensation, how are you going to compensate your participants? All this should come out in your informed consent form. How are you going to reimburse? How are you going to manage the vulnerable communities? Data transfer agreements, I've talked about that. And then the continuous learning, these are the courses I've talked about. So, so some of the challenges, big data, AI, because now AI has also, it's another world whereby it is coming in with lots of things, and also genetic research and bioethics about data ownership and genetic data. And then for future directions, we should strengthen the ethical regulation. So in decision-making strategies, you identify the ethical issue within the research, you gather relevant facts, and consider ethical principles. Ethical principles are institutional, national, international, and then you could look out at that and then evaluate the options and risks, and then you make an informed decision. So this is the end of the webinar. I'm really thankful for your listening, and now I'm expecting to read out questions in the chat box. I said whoever has questions should drop them down in the chat box. So I've started scrolling down the chat.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. John. Thank you for that insightful presentation. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. And in his presentation, we all know that he has took us through on the type of research, on the research ethic, history of research, the core ethics, ethical principles, and informed consent, and so on. So, do we have anyone? Because I've scrolled through the chat box and there is no any. Okay, we have a question. We just have a question here now. Um, Under justice, fair and fair selection of research subjects. It said, for example, if our research is focused on women of reproductive group, does excluding old age women is considered violation of the principle of justice? Dr. John, that's a question for you. Then there is another one here
woman,
too.
please, can you tell me once again?
It said, if our research is focused on women of reproductive group, does it exclude old age women? Is excluding of old age women is considered violation of principle of justice?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. So, violating, okay, yeah, so you having a research study that wants to just understand maybe the characteristics of women in their reproductive age. It is not a bad selection as long as you justify. So you should justify why, the reason to why you are choosing those research participants and excluding the other ones. So if at all the reason, if you don't justify, then you are violating the justice or the fair participant selection. Have you got my answer clearly?
Well, Mohammed, is that that answer okay for you?
Yes, very
Okay, by
good.
you? Okay, thank you. So
I
we have
also
the
have,
second.
yes,
Okay,
I also
you
have a
can go on,
second
please.
question. Okay. So my second question is about anonymization. So assuming that I am having an interview with a student, which is my research participant. So while discussing about different topics, he was telling me that he was getting some kind of abuse or bully from his classmates and so on. So while I am maybe transcribing or writing the document, how can I ensure anonymization without mentioning the names of these individuals, like the people that who were bullying him and so on? So maybe he was giving me examples of individuals and teachers, and he was calling them by name. So how can I ensure anonymization during my report?
Yeah. Thank you so much. That is really a very nice question. So if at all you have such scenario, you can de-identify the name. So you can use some abstract names in your write-up or in your thematic analysis. So you should maybe call them participant X, this one Z, fought with this one, but you shouldn't bring out the names out loud. So you should use other, because even some Professor Gertrude once faced that scenario, and she decided to use just the names such as Isaac, John, and then they said even my name is a regular name that could be used, Fred. So the names that could be used and they're just for anonymizing, and then another person would say X, Y, or Z participant when they are informing about in their write-up. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. There is another question here. It says some research institutions does not have research ethic office. What can a researcher do in such situation?
Yeah, so for that question, so when your research institution lacks a research ethics office, you can still submit your research protocol to any other REC, research ethics institution, research ethics committee, and then they would review your work without any challenge. So even if you are, let's say, I don't know whether Lagos University exists, but if at all you are in Lagos University and then Lagos University lacks a REC, you can submit your protocol to a university, let's say in Uganda, and then they review and give you a REC approval. But it is within the country. It is better within the countries of research where the research is being conducted. So let's say if at all you're having international research, let's say you have collaborators from the United States, they have got their REC approval, but when they have that research, which is collaborative, someone is within the United States collaborating with a local PI, let's say in Uganda. I don't love calling them the local PIs, the indigenous PI within a certain community, then they also need to receive another REC review at that specific area, in that specific community. But for that, you can really do that. You can get research acceptance from another REC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another one. Said, if I am traveling to another country for research, where should I get the research clearance from? My university or the international university I am traveling to? Do you get that? Hello?
Yes, can you repeat that question?
If I am traveling to another country for research, where should I get the research clearance from? My university or the international university I am traveling to?
Yeah, so when let's say it depends on where you're going to conduct your research from. If you are going to conduct your research from, let's say, Malawi, and you are traveling to another country, but you have research assistants who are going to collect data from Malawi, then you can get your research clearance or REC clearance at any institution within Malawi. But if at all you are having research which is multinational, let's say you're having Nigeria, then you're having Uganda, you're having this, so you need to get research clearance from all those RECs within those countries. It depends on the place where, or the community where you are conducting your research.
Okay, thank you very much. And there are two other questions here. Is there a role for verbal consent in medical research? Is there a role for verbal consent in medical research? And there is this second one, that how do I guide against inducement while trying to compensate my research participants? Hello? Do you get that? Do you get those questions?
Yeah. So the first thing, is there
I couldn't get that.
verbal consent in medical verbal consent in medical research for verbal consent, because now we are having resetting, and that research will have participants who are undergoing, let's say, undergoing a very tough emergency scenario, then you would seek for verbal consent, which is okay. But in your write-up, you should show it out clearly in your protocol that we are going to have a verbal consent because of this and this. Because even in consenting, you can even you can be exempted. You can get an informed consent waiver. Let's say you want studying the behavior, human behavior. Let's say you want to find out that people who go to the toilet, do they wash their hands? And then you are going to just observe behavior, and then you count the hands at the washing bowl. So, but however, when you first inform them that, you know, I'm going to recruit you into the study to understand whether you guys are washing your hands well. So if you get them to that, then they will all wash their hands, and you won't understand whether it was the right thing that they were usually doing. But when you allow you to ask for any consent, you just go observe behavior, then you document your things. So, and then the second question, how do I guide against inducement while trying to compensate my research participants? So this is a very, 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 very technical question, and I thank you so much. You are thinking like a research ethicist. I really thank you for that. So for you, guiding against inducement while trying to compensate, you should look out at that area and the population. Is your population vulnerable? So $10 or $100. Let's say you want to study low back pain among office workers at a certain university. You find that giving them, let's say, $35 would mean nothing to them. And when you go to a very deep village, and then you are having people, let's say literate persons, and then you would actually be like an inducement. So for this question, you should just be, it is contextualize the area we are going to study, and then you look out at those people, and then try to make sure that you give them the amount that is required.
Okay, there is a question on beliefs. Hello? Hello, Dr. John, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Okay, there is a question on
Yes.
different beliefs and what build. But the questions, I'm not so clear about the question. Can you say the question by Asewe?
It is down, eh?
Hello? You get that?
Yes, I'm hearing. Okay, with all the different beliefs, worldviews which exist in the world, how best can a researcher, let's say in Uganda, ensure that has maintained international research ethics, and anyway, is it necessary to comply to the international research ethics when someone wants to publish the research based here in Uganda? Yeah, Asima Msinge, that is a very good question. So remember, everyone has their different standpoints and viewpoints and worldviews. But however, someone is saying that for them, they would just comply to the Ugandan. So we have international research guidelines. So these international research guidelines that we have just shaping our let's say, let me be clear, because as I'm seeing it looks to be from the Uganda National Science, where it is a regular, because the Ugandan UNCST or the Ugandan comply to the international. And however, a study which comes in with different beliefs, but someone in the United States, let me be clear, let's say someone in Norway is supporting homosexuality, and then in Uganda, our president said no to homosexuality. So if at all you are having, so we have also the state laws that govern our research. So if at all having an international collaboration whereby you are going to study the lifestyle of homosexuals in Uganda, you'll get jailed. Therefore, the international guidelines just shape the national, but your national guidelines are the ones that you should comply to, because they comply to some of the things within the international. Even in the United States, they have guidelines that are CFR, the CF 45, you can write it down, 45 CFR 46. It is the document regulating research. But however, it says that all we've stated does not override the countries, the principles that are set up within the countries. It is just a guideline, but does not override that. I think Asima was saying, you've got that question clearly. And then there's another person, Ngonzi Osadebe, asked about what do you mean by blinded research participants? Blinded research participants are those that let's say I'm studying about the effectiveness of a new drug. So when I have a new drug here, and then I also have a standard drug, but I want to compare in a clinical trial. So blinding the research participant would be that I'm going to have a drug that is a placebo, or in the that I would put in the control arm, and then I also have a drug that I'm studying. So when I'm having a drug that I'm studying, yeah, I will make sure that I don't tell the participants that you are in a control group. You are just receiving a placebo. You are not receiving the real treatment, because I want to study. So I would just make a tablet that resembles exactly like the tablet that is under investigation, but this tablet has no therapeutic benefit at all. So I would make sure that I blind the participants. They don't understand that they are put into this arm or this arm. So a single blinded study, we blind the participants. They don't understand they won't understand where they are being placed. And then the double blinded, the research participants and then the researchers themselves don't know. And then there is even triple blinding. And so in triple blinding, we have even the statistician doesn't know where these participants have been put. So we usually use electronic softwares to do that.
And there are two other questions, and that will be the last for this session. Is how best can I get informed consent when I'm using an online tool, especially when I'm dealing with a larger number? And I want you to answer it also alongside with this. Is it possible to publish a research without a consent? Those are the last question for today. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Doctor, how best can I get informed consent when I'm using an online tool, especially when I'm dealing with a big number of about 300? So you just document that you are going to use an electronic tool for consenting. So we usually consent a lot, even with some of applications, I think even Zoom or any other thing. So when we have applications, there are areas where they say, I accept all the terms and conditions of this. So even that is consenting, but you need to be clear. So if at all the REG, or the Research Ethics Committee sits and see that really you giving in electronic consenting forms would not So another one, is it possible to publish a research results without a consent? Yeah, so that question is good. So for you to publish someone's results without consent would bring in issues. You can publish or in a predatory journal or in a peer-reviewed journal. But however, with time to come, if at all there comes complaints about that, you are going to see that your work is going to be retracted. Retracted is that published work that has already been published is going to be pulled down because of certain ethical violations. So you need to maintain integrity when you are including participants within the study. Make sure that you do what is required of you. You follow the procedures, because even if your study takes around 10 years, it can be retracted. So that is also that question has brought about that. It has reminded us of a certain concept we had not talked about. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. John Ssentongo, for your time.
Yeah, do we have any other questions?
I think we're actually running out of time. This is supposed to be for 1. So, and okay, if there are no other questions, I think we can just round up. Thank you so much, Dr. John. And I really want to extend our sincere gratitude to you for sharing your expertise and also engaging us in such an important discussion on research ethics. And I want to appreciate everyone who took the time to join us today. Your participation and contribution has really made this session truly valuable. I can see we've had so many questions, and I hope that we have all gained practical insights that will help us in our research endeavors. I've also learned a lot, and I've also gained a lot. So let's continue to uphold ethical standards in research. fostering credibility, trust, and excellence in our work. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you once again, everyone. I think we should take a screenshot. Can we all turn on our cameras so that I know today is a Saturday, but if you can, so that we can just take a screenshot. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you all. Thank you. So I would take that now. Then I'll take another one. We still have so many people who haven't turned on their cameras. Okay, well, it's fine to just do that. All right. Thank you so much. So, and do have a lovely weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Bye. Good afternoon, Mr. Toebi.
Thank you, Ma.
Come on, sir. Well done, sir.
Thank
you, Ma.
Thank you.